James,
Tim?
thank you for coming on.
Of course, man.
You are a podcaster as well. You've had some really cool stuff done in the e-commerce sector, but most importantly, also really into self-development and meditation. But that's my sum up for you. But for people that don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself.
Who am I? It's a good question.
Yeah.
One that I think we're all trying to figure out.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just like to always describe myself as a curious person, you know. That's where a lot of my projects have come from, just a sense of curiosity. So, you know, with the podcast you mentioned, I'd seen all these people who had achieved things that I wanted to achieve, and I was curious how they did that. So that's me trying to unpack that and learn how to do it. You know, basically all the other projects I've done, e-commerce, meditation, all these other things, it's all come from curiosity. So if I had to sum myself up, I'd say a curious person.
You know why I love that, and why this has actually happened is I stumbled across your Instagram page, read your Instagram bio, and I've gone, hang on, this guy's like me. This is cool. He's I think I'll get along with him, and I think that curious nature comes across very well in your podcast, in everything you do. So that's really cool. Can you were you that kid that would ask all the questions?
No, that's funny, man. I was actually, if people saw how I am today and how I was when I was a kid, it's completely different. If anyone who knew me when I was in like primary school and early high school and they saw who I was today, they would think it was a completely different person, because I was always like the shy kid. I didn't know how to talk to people, didn't have many friends. And so I was never really the person who was just always asking questions, but I was asking questions in my mind. And I was always curious internally, but I never really learned how to externalize that and actually communicate effectively until a bit later on, I think.
And did that, because I guess because I'm the same, I relate to that. I was very introverted all the way through primary school. I was the classic kid that would hide behind my parents' leg the first day of school. But as soon as I hit year 7, this change happened. And I think curiosity, staying on that line, brought it about. But do you think you were curious as to, okay, I'm introverted, how can I now make friends? Did that lead you down the personal development?
Yeah, totally, man. That was probably the initial curiosity, and it's like, how do I interact with people, because didn't have that skill set, didn't come naturally to me. So that was something I wanted to learn, and that was the first thing that's evolved into other areas as well. But yeah, you know, it's funny, like I literally went and got a sales job. This is fast forwarding a little bit to after high school, but
that's good. That's where the real magic starts.
I literally went and got a sales job because it was something that absolutely petrified me and that I didn't think I would ever be able to do, but I saw the value in learning that skill set. So I literally was like, all right, what's the hardest sort of thing I could do to throw myself in the deep end? And so I ended up getting a door-to-door sales job where I basically just went around to cafes and tried to sell them this app.
Nice.
And if you can imagine that, it's like, you know, you're walking into a cafe unannounced. They're busy as hell. Owners aren't interested in getting sold by the 10th person who's walked in that day. So my job was basically to go in and just try and get them to actually sit down while there's actually paying customers in there, you know, run through this 10-minute presentation, try and convince them to sign up to this app. And, you know, it was just, I was going into like 50 cafes a day, getting brutally rejected by at least like 40 of them. And then, you know, like just hearing no, and just, it was literally like, I was like sweating and shaking before going into each cafe initially. But that was actually one of the best experiences I've had professionally, because learning that skill set of just developing that resilience, developing that thick skin, and also how to communicate, you know, like actually you start to pick up these little things. It's like if you move in this certain way or you use these certain phrases instead of other words, people perceive it more positively. And it actually became like a bit of an experiment, you know, where you could kind of test all these different things and you get immediate feedback. So it was hard at the start, but it was actually something really enjoyable towards the end and something I got a lot out of.
Yeah, definitely. That thick skin, I can relate to that. My first job was telemarketing.
Equally hard.
I respect the door-to-door stuff. I really respect that.
Dude, it's like now when I see someone come to like door to door.
Yeah.
You know, I used to get angry at like
No, you
salespeople,
just
but now
go-
I'm just like, dude, like I get it.
I'll hear your pitch.
Yeah.
I'm the same with the phone. Like someone calls me on the phone, I'll listen to them
Yeah.
and then criticize. And some people I've even given impromptu sales training to.
Have you ever considered using this
Have you
approach?
considered doing that? That would have made me buy. Like,
I get it.
yeah. I guess when you're in a sales environment, what did you really learn? So yes, you had the relationship and the communication, but what do you think was your main takeaways from just jumping in the deep end and doing sales? And as a two-pronged question, I guess, how much has that shaped your career now? Because you're an engineer by trade, but you're also in the business sector. So tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. Good questions. So in terms of what I took away and learned from that, for me, it was that basically anything is a learned skill. Because like I was saying before, man, if someone saw me and was like, and how I was in high school, and then you told them that I would ever be in like a sales role and do well at it, they'd be like, nah, no way, you know? So it really just like proved to myself that anything that we do is really a learned skill. And that's pretty empowering because then you think about all these things that you think you're not natural at. But for me, I proved to myself that I could actually overcome that natural barrier and become good at something. And so now I've applied that to other things and other skills. Like I never used to think I was like an athletic person, but now I've seen like that I can overcome that and actually become athletic, you know, become fit. So it's just, that was the biggest takeaway I got. Was just
and for people just listening along, you're in good shape. So go and watch some snippets on YouTube. You've done well.
Yeah, thank you. So it's really just all I can apply to any area, and that was the biggest thing I took away. And in terms of how it's affected my career now, like it's everything, man. You'll know this as a salesperson, but sales is everything, man. Everything is sales. You know, if you're getting a job, that's sales. You got to go through an interview. You got to sell yourself to the employer, convince them why you're going to be a good fit for the role. If you're asking someone out on a date, that's sales. You got to convince that you're a good partner.
Also, I'll argue with Tinder, Hump, Bumble, whatever it is these days, people are dating 5 people at the same time, especially in that first 2 weeks. So you gotta sell hard. You gotta sell hard.
Yeah, if you're not close.
I told my girlfriend now in that first 2 weeks, I'm using every sales tactic in the book to get you because I really want to be with you.
Totally, man.
You know?
And that's the thing. And I guess like you and me, we get it. But some people hear the word sales and they think, oh, like used car salesman in a cheap suit, trying to rip people off, flogging things off that they don't really need. But to me, sales is just communication, you know? It's being able to present what's in your head, what you're thinking, present it to someone in a way that they understand, where you're actually highlighting the benefits to them clearly. And so for me, it's all about just communication. That's what sales is. And the better you can communicate, the better you can sell, and the more you're going to get.
Yeah, definitely. I'll spurt off my definition of sales as well. It's literally showing people the right product for them. Showing people, do they need it, do they not, communicating it. So that there's an umbrella term of communication. But literally without a salesperson talking you done correctly, asking you what's your needs, what's your wants, what are you going to use this thing for, and if they sell you something that fits all that, then they've done their job and they've cut down your research by tons. I mean, the data that we have on touch points, so for people listening on, a touch point is every interaction that you have with a brand. It's getting up to about 20 or 30 times that someone needs to see your brand, but a sales process can cut that down. So think about having to research something. It's like 2 hours of your time. Go talk to a proper salesman. That you trust. Yeah. And look, it's at least you and I will be able to pick out the sleazy salesman straight away. I've got a story of buying a car, which is just fascinating. And this Hyundai guy didn't even ask me why I walked into a Hyundai dealership. And then he proceeded to walk me next door to the Alfa Romeo section because I came in wearing a suit. And then he's like, oh, let's go. Did his song and dance. And then was like, let's go for a test drive. I'm like, mate, I walked into the Hyundai. I don't want Alfa Romeo. Like you can suss out the sleaziness, but to your point, find something you can trust.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, so you had a bit of a career in sales. Let's talk about closing. Like, well, how do you define closing?
Closing in sales. I guess it's actually getting the deal done, like there's a lot of people who sell and they can sell well and they keep selling and keep selling until it gets to the point where they oversell. It's like, I guess to use a silly example, if you're on a date with someone, you can have a great time and like show that you're a really good person. But if you never lean in for that kiss, like you can just keep it going and it just eventually becomes awkward.
Yeah. I have a rule: first date, always kiss.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Always go for
ASAP.
ASAP. Always be closing.
And that's it, man. It comes back to sales as life,
Yeah, totally is. I think that was because the introverted side of me started the sales job at 18 and I could see the relevance with life and sales. I was like, I can go to clubs and meet more people if I learn how to sell.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be romantic. It's friendships as well, just like how can you, because, like if you're talking to someone you've never spoken to before, just randomly approaching them in the street, not necessarily romantically, but you just want to have a conversation with someone, it's easy to come across as really awkward and threatening, So if you know how to like present yourself with your body language, like don't come straight on to someone, like come a bit sideways and, like don't just like crowd their space, just like basic things. And you're just going to have more fulfilling relationships with people in general.
Wow. 100%. Even just having the guile to ask for help when you need it.
Yeah.
Just the confidence, the added confidence that sales gives you outside of the profession.
Yep, totally. And it's even like, absolutely right, man. And even with things like hard conversations with like your boss or something, like you want to ask for a raise or you want to talk about an issue that's going on, like if you're a salesperson, you're having tough conversations every day, so it's just another conversation. So, but some people like, you're a behind the scenes accountant, like you only have like personal meetings like once a week or whatever, and they're always just like fluffy. And, it's hard when it comes to that time where you want to ask for more money or you want to bring up this important issue, like you don't have any practice. So I always say for me personally, the best thing I ever did was do a sales role. And you don't have to become like a salesperson full time. Like I only did that door-to-door thing for like 3 or 4 months, but even that 3 or 4 months was just really defining for me. So. And
then after that 3 or 4 months, did you have this innate confidence in your ability to then go and do any job? Within reason. I mean, you're not a painter, so you're not going to go and do unless you haven't told me you are. But any job in engineering, sales, business.
Yeah, that's it, man. It definitely gives you confidence because, like we were saying before, it's just communicating an idea, And so even if it's something highly technical like accounting or engineering, you're still having to communicate an idea, Like, perfect example, like if you're an engineer and you're working with like site workers on a mine site or something, they're speaking a different lingo and language to you, Like you're thinking in terms of like specs or like the business side, the dollars, but they're just thinking about, is this thing going to work? Or, like, and you kind of have to change your communication style to match the audience. And that's something that sales helps with.
Definitely really cool. So I guess my question is, you've had e-commerce experience and you're in the e-commerce space right now. So look, there's a lot of stuff I can ask. I can even go on the sales line and say, how has sales translated to e-commerce in writing copy?
Yeah, totally. Same thing. Again, sales matching communication to the communication style of the audience. In this case, the audience is someone reading text on a screen. So basic principle is the same. You're communicating the benefits of whatever you're selling, but you're doing it in a way where it's through text and copy rather than through face-to-face or through words, which in some ways is easier, but it's also sometimes harder as well because you have to you can't use like body language or tone of voice or anything like that. It's just straight words. So, but it's all relevant, all the same. Yeah.
So the e-commerce brand that you're with now, if you want to give it a shout out, I'd love you to. And also, what was your why in terms of going to that? Because you could apply your skills to any e-commerce section. Yeah, what is the product and what is the why? If
absolutely, man. I'll share as much as I can. So basically, the way I got into this was, it's funny. I've kind of done. We haven't got through my full background and stuff, but I've kind of done a lot of stumbling around in my life, you know. So again, like testing different things, running experiments, trying new things. And this opportunity that I'm working on at the moment basically just came about out of dumb luck, really. You know, one of my friends.
The best things.
That's it, man. Some of the best things do come out of dumb luck. So basically, one of my friends who I'd known for a few years, he's been in the e-commerce space, and like I regularly catch up with him and we just talk about projects we're working on. And he'd always tell me about his online store, and he's doing well with it. And I just saw what he was doing and I was like, wow, it's really powerful to see, you know, what he was achieving with that. And then, there's just really an opportunity. Like my background more recently is more like customer success.
Experience.
Customer experience.
I think that's on your LinkedIn bio at the moment, customer experience. Doing a bit of stalking.
That's it. Love it. And so basically that was in a more B2B setting, but, you know, it applies to B2C as well. And, you know, my friend, his store was really taking off in terms of sales. Like him and his brother were working on it. They were doing really well for marketing, generating sales, generating large volumes of orders, but the customer service and customer experience kind of sucked. So he actually asked me to come on board just to help him out in terms of building out some of those processes. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Cool. I love CX. That's something I'm fascinated about because it takes in the macro, and then it also takes in the micro and the tiny things. And the macro is obvious, but the micro is often the things that cost you sales. Little things like not having trust badges, little things like conversion rate optimization, where you have a green add to cart button instead of a one that colors in. And these things are there for a reason. But I guess when you're looking at a website in terms of customer experience and doing an audit, what are the things you're looking out for?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess when I talk about customer...
And it would change depending on the thing, but...
Totally.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of that, so it's less so in terms of optimizing things like that, like the button placement and the colors and all that kind of stuff, even though they're important. But what I've been doing is more building out the processes behind the customer service in a way. So, you know, like, for example, with my friend's store, he was getting like hundreds of customer contacts a day, but they were coming through email, they were coming through Facebook Messenger, through Instagram comments, like all these different channels that were just like completely separate. So what I've kind of done is just like streamlined everything. So they've got like customer service reps, but now it's all like coming through the one help desk software, and just like building out those processes. Like what do we say when the customer's got this question? What's the best way we can respond to that? If there's this issue, how do we resolve it? And kind of building out those more, I guess, the actual interactions with the customers and fixing their problems and helping sell more.
Because a mistake people have is they think that online selling is just all about the numbers, turning people in, getting customers. Customers are just another number to you. And that's just completely incorrect. I mean, you still need to build that relationship, and I guess that's a big part of what you're doing, yeah?
Totally. It's even, you could argue it's even more important for online sales, because if a customer is angry and you've got your Facebook presence and your Instagram presence and everything, they've got a lot of channels they can badmouth you on, you know? So it's like almost like it's, even though you don't physically interact with them, it's more important to keep them happy. And so, yeah, you see it all the time. Brands just get absolutely shredded online. So that's what I've been trying to avoid.
I'd love to actually get your opinion though on how you deal with hate. How you deal with hate comments or hate and negative. There's two there. So there's the negative comment, which is like, okay, wow, we may have done something wrong, like a shipping order or whatever. Not saying you would have, but stuff happens. Or like, you know, a disaster happens and then shipments are late. So yeah, how do you deal with negative comments? And then I'll come back to the hate comments because I think that's more around your personal brand. So sure. Yeah, how do you deal with negative comments as a business?
As a business, I guess it's just, there's an underlying issue as to why someone is angry. So fix the problem. That's step one.
Simple, fix the problem. Simple. Or find out what the problem is.
That's right. Problem. So yeah, people do things for reasons. People are angry for a reason. find out what that is and resolve it. That's step one. And, 80% of the time, that's enough. Just fix the issue and people are forgiving. In the case where they're just bitter or spiteful, you might have like 5% of people who, no matter what you do, you can't keep them happy. Reality is that's just part of business, essentially. So do what you can to help. If you've done something wrong, take accountability for it, fix it. And if they're still angry, then they're still angry.
Yeah, no, very true, very true. I'd love to touch a bit on your podcasting and personal branding because you're doing a good job of it. But I've found that as soon as you start doing some personal development and you start leveling up, you can find individuals, and I don't want to get negative straight away, but I sort of am, but you can find individuals that resist it because they're seeing you go on and do good things and it's like, okay, now I can't hang out with them for a beer every weekend. How do you deal with that? Is it a matter of limiting the negative time and focusing on the positive stuff that you're doing? Or how do you?
Yeah,
have you ever had any interactions with that?
It's a great question, man, and it's hard because for me personally, like I'm not at the level at the moment where I get random people just like hating on me.
Yeah.
Like
One day we'll get that.
That's the goal. Yeah. But and that's the thing. It's oftentimes it's quite insidious, and it's from people who actually care about you, sometimes that can be your biggest detractors, not on purpose, but, for me personally, I'll give you a specific example. Like when I first started like trying to build my personal brand, like it was before the podcast, but I was doing a bit more stuff on Instagram, like some videos and just like sharing things I was learning. And for me, literally the reason I started doing more on Instagram was because all my like friends and people I knew were on Facebook and I like didn't want them to see it. So I did it on Instagram instead. And then, so it was great. Like I felt like I had all this freedom. I could like be myself. I didn't have to worry about judgment. All this stuff. I do that
with TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but then, one person sees your Instagram, they start following you, and then eventually like people like come across and they start seeing it. And I actually noticed in myself, I was starting to get like self-conscious about it. And, and people didn't, this is the thing, like people they're not going to come out and say like, what are you doing? Like you're a loser or whatever, but it's almost like implied in a way. They're just like, oh, like, yeah, I see you're doing all this stuff. Like, yeah, what's with that or whatever. It's just like these things that they're not blatantly negative, but it can really knock your confidence in a way.
Yeah, like a backhanded compliment slap sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly right. And so what I sort of found was there's kind of a few stages to it, like first, I forget what exactly the people say, but it's like first they laugh at you.
First they laugh at you, then they
hate you.
Then they admire you. Oh no, mine's the last one. Then they like question it, but then they admire you.
Yeah, something like that.
You'll find it on Instagram somewhere. Someone's got the graphic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's it's like, and that's what many people struggle with, getting through that initial 2 stages where people are questioning you, people are laughing at you. Like it's bad, but like again, coming back to like sales, it's like I'm used to getting like beaten down and rejected, so it was all right. But and now I feel like I'm kind of at this spot where people kind of look at what I'm doing, and I can see like the same people who initially kind of laughed at it. I can see they're almost like in quiet admiration now.
Yeah.
And so just you get there eventually, and I think it's a big lesson for people listening or watching, like whenever you try something new, you're going to suck and it's going to be like cringy, but you have to get through that hump. And then not only do you suck, but people are questioning you and saying, why are you doing this? What's the point? And so it's all negative, but if you can just keep doing it for long enough, eventually you get better. Eventually people start to come around and see what you're doing actually has merit. And it's just getting through that dip that is the hard part.
Yeah. Would you say you're through it now yourself?
I think I'm starting to come out of it.
Yeah.
I can see the light.
Well, I'm a fan, man. So yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you.
Personal development. There's a really awesome photo. For those listening along, I'll try and describe it. It's James, and you're sitting next to a pile of books, and I think that's your podcast cover. It's your Facebook or one of your Instagram profiles, I think.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. You'll find it. But it's a really good picture because it just shows the amount of knowledge that you're willing to consume. My question on the back of that is, what is your favorite book, personal development wise? Hard one.
Hard one.
Broad one.
And a good question. One book that had a big impact on me was one called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson.
Yep.
And basically the premise of it is that, you know, when people see successful people, whether it be in business, family, health, they kind of assume that it's just they took this one giant leap, you know, like in business, they closed this one massive deal and got all this media, and then suddenly they sold their company and became rich and all this kind of stuff. Or like in their health, they just see someone who's like really fit and they're like, oh, he must have always been that way. Or, you know, he just trained really hard for like a month or whatever. But reality is, anyone who's like achieved massive things, it always comes as a result of these small daily disciplines that just add up over time. And people kind of get it conceptually with like money, like compound interest, you know, like you put $1 a day away and then it just like for a lot of the time nothing happens, and then suddenly the compound interest kicks in and you get a big return. It's the same with anything else. And just the way this book's written, it really highlighted that to me, that it's, you know, the most important thing is just showing up every day and just being 1% better, you know, like doing one little thing more. And it won't seem like you're having an impact, but this is what happens over the long term. This is what will make the difference between success and failure. And the way he describes in the book is that they're easy to do, these small things the successful people do, but they're also easy not to do. You know, it's easy to read 5 pages of a book in the morning, but it's also easy not to read 5 pages of a book in the morning. And, you know, for me personally, for a long time, I was just reading 10 pages of a book every morning. And then the end result is, after a few years, that pile of books on the ground, you know? Whereas most people would say, well, not most people, but some people would say, 10 pages, that's not worth doing. Like, I'm just going to wait until I got a bit more time and I'll sit down and read the whole book in one go or whatever. And then nothing ever happens. So yeah, that really just highlighted to me. It's kind of an obvious principle when you think about it, but the way he described it really resonated with me. Yeah.
That's up. I'm going to go pick it up.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. A lot of development books talk about the power of waking up at a specific time, typically early, 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Have you adopted that? Or, I mean, I know it's individual to people, but have you adopted a better, let's say, a morning routine?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be 6 a.m., like a morning routine.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think there's power in having a morning routine for sure. You know, just finding what gets you in a state of like peak performance and being able to replicate that every day is powerful. So you're not just like relying on random chance. You know, like I knew we were going to have this interview today. So I know exactly what I need to do when I wake up to just go through my routine and get in like a good state to be able to like think clearly and communicate well. And it's something I do every day, you know, so I know what I need to do. And so for me personally, it's get up at 6 a.m. Funny you mentioned that. That's exactly it. And I do, at the moment, I basically do a 1 hour meditation sitting, which maybe is something we can talk about later, but.
Yeah, I'd love to get in at 1 hour.
Yeah.
Man, I've done 10 minutes.
We'll get into that. Slight edge.
Slight edge.
But, and then, so from 7 till 7:30, I actually just go for a walk down to the cafe, just grab a coffee. So, you know, I'm all zenned out from meditating, and then I get caffeinated and sort of get perked up a bit. And then I come back and I read for half an hour and do a little bit of journaling, you know, write down things I'm grateful for, things that are on my mind. And then that takes me to about 8:30 and I'm basically ready to start the day. You know? Yeah. So
you've done so much. I woke up at 8:30 today.
So it happens sometimes to me as well. Like sometimes I wake up, my alarm goes off, I completely sleep through it, and then 8:30 comes and I'm like,
And I think the key there is not to judge yourself if that happens.
Yeah.
You know, it happens.
That's right. It happens to everyone. So, you know, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. It's like if you miss your routine on one day, it doesn't mean you should be like, oh, I'm just going to scrap the whole week, you know? It's like just reset at the end of the day, reset, just start again the next day, you know? it's like if you eat one piece of cake, that doesn't mean you have to then eat the whole cake and be like, oh, my diet's done, you know? So just, be consistent, but don't beat yourself up.
Yeah, very, very true. Let's loop back to that 1 hour meditation. Because I mentioned it in the intro too. So is that Vipassana?
Yeah.
Or is that, so that's what you're going off?
Do you know what it is?
I don't know. And I'm sure there are people listening on who do know what it is and they're really excited now. And there's people that don't. But let us.
I'll give a brief rundown. It's something interesting to me because I'd kind of always done, not always, but in recent years, I've done some sort of meditation, like using like Headspace, like you said before, like 10-minute meditation in the morning.
That's exactly what I did.
Exactly.
Yeah. I stopped as soon as I had to pay for it. But
so you used it for 10 days and felt good, and then it's like,
felt good and stopped. But I will get back on it. I know, because it was very powerful during those 10 days.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me personally, like the way I look at meditation, it's almost like brushing your teeth. If you do it every day, you don't feel the difference. But if you stop brushing your teeth for a day, you really notice the difference. And so it's almost like a maintenance thing for me. And I noticed that when I was doing these 10-minute meditations. And then I was hearing a lot of people were talking about these 10-day Vipassana meditation courses, where it's basically, people I was like following online just kept mentioning, I heard the word a few times, Vipassana, meditation, blah, blah, blah. And then, so I looked a little bit into it because I was kind of curious about meditation. And it's basically, so what you do is you go and do a 10-day course to learn this technique. And it's a really interesting journey, really, because it's 10 days where they take your phone, they take your car keys. You're not allowed to talk for the 10 days. You're not allowed to interact with any other people. There's other people there at the course doing it, but you're not allowed to interact with them at all. And basically you just spend 10 days meditating all day. So you do about 100 hours of meditation over the 10 days, and it's a wild experience. So I ended up doing that last year in September.
Okay, so I now identify as an extroverted personality. For me, walking around for 10 days and I know that there's people there and not be able to even just go, hey, how you doing? Was that hard?
Oh, dude. So I consider myself introverted. I don't think I'm shy, but I do think I'm introverted. And so when I first heard about this, I was like, oh yeah, 10 days without talking to anyone. That sounds quite nice,
That's heaven.
Yeah. And then everyone that I was speaking to who didn't know about it, I'd say like, I'm doing this 10-day retreat. And they're like, oh, it sounds really relaxing. And I was like, yeah, I don't think it's meant to be relaxing, but like I didn't really know that much about it. And so it's crazy, man. When you go, it's really difficult. It was way more challenging than I expected. And there's a few reasons for that. And one of them is just a lack of interaction and stimulation, like it's crazy how much we just like distract ourselves and stimulate ourselves, phones, emails, talking to people, even just like getting lunch, eating food, like just all these things we distract ourselves with. And in this environment, it's crazy. It's something most people have never experienced because, they cook all your meals for you. So you're literally just there to meditate. So you have a simple bed, you get up at 4:30 every morning, you meditate, they cook all your meals so you don't have to like prepare anything or wash anything. So you're literally just like meditating all day and nothing else. And you go to some weird places in your mind, or at least I did. So, it's crazy. When you remove that stimulation and distraction, that's when you start to actually go deep within yourself and kind of dig up some interesting things.
Yeah, I mean, I won't ask you to share it because it could have been some personal stuff.
I'm happy to if you want, man.
Okay, yeah. What one or two things what came up for you that?
So the way the teacher described it is basically because you're learning a specific meditation technique. You're not just sitting there like relaxing. It's a very specific technique, and so the way the teacher describes it is basically like, you're almost performing like a brain surgery on yourself for these 10 days. So the first stage is you go in and you're kind of like digging all this crap out of your head. So, like the first stage when you like clean your house, first it gets messier and then you tidy it up. It's the same with this. At first, you dig up all this crap you didn't even realize that was in your mind, all the stuff that you've been like repressing or distracting yourself from. and you feel way worse initially. But then the idea is by the end of it, you kind of put all the pieces back together and you've kind of faced it and dealt with it. And that was the experience for me. So like, yeah, it's just some things, man. Cause like I've never been through any like serious trauma, like I've had a very blessed life. It's been like majority of the time it's been very positive. I'm very blessed. But I think for every single person there are some things that, like life's not perfect, there's some things that happen and it does affect you. And, for me personally, like there's just some certain things that probably it's not much value going too deep into them, but like that I was kind of like repressing and not like facing or dealing with. And I didn't even realize they were there. That's the thing. So when you start kind of digging in your mind, there's a lot of stuff under the surface that you didn't realize was there. And this kind of brings it to the surface and you're forced to face it, And so like, I don't really cry that much, which I don't think is like good or bad. Like I'm not much of a crier, but during this 10-day retreat, man, I was like crying like all the time, just like had on one of the days, like on the 7th day, I had this like breakdown where I was just like crying for like 5 minutes. I couldn't even like stand. I just had to like sit down and cry and just like random. Yeah, it's just all these things and that was something that was always in my mind. I didn't realize was there. And it was sort of like causing me this low level, like emotional pain. And then to actually kind of dig it up and face it and process it is powerful because that's what this whole technique is all about. It's about feeling sensations and emotions and not trying to dull them or try and get rid of them, but face them, process them. And once you do that and you face them and you process them, then they just naturally dissipate, And it's about developing what they call the equanimous mindset, which is, not reacting to things, not being so reactive, just seeing things for what they are, just processing them and letting them go,
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Very crazy. Awesome. And I guess in terms of peak performance, getting yourself to peak of what you can be, have you seen a change in terms of that since you've started meditation? And if so, what?
Yeah, totally, man. Good question. So again, I just mentioned before the equanimous mindset. Like I felt like I've kind of always been like that, but I'm even more so now. Like it takes a lot to phase me, Like to give the audience an example of what I'm talking about here, like, if you're driving along and someone like cuts you off or whatever, and you get like super angry at that person, it's not actually the person who's cut you off that's causing anger. It's your own internal reaction to what that person's done, You can have two people who are in the same situation. One person, their day is ruined. They're just in a bad mood for the rest of the day. They're just thinking about that guy, like how they're going to kill him and all this stuff. And then there's someone else who's more equanimous who sees that happen. They react to that appropriately. They like stop the car or whatever to avoid crashing. And then they might like be frazzled for like 10 seconds, but then they go on with their day, and just don't let it get to them. And so for me, I feel even more so like that. Like coming back to what we were saying before about people like hating on you and like criticizing you, all that kind of stuff, that stuff phases me very little. And especially now after doing that, because I can just see it objectively for what it is. Like it doesn't really mean anything, and, you can say that logically. A lot of people can say that logically, like, oh, that person hates me. There's no basis for that, but I still feel hurt by it. But for me now, I can see something like that and it just means very little to me, So that helps me because it helps me be bold. It helps me take risks. It helps me not hold myself back based on other people. So a whole host of benefits, man. Yeah.
I think that's a really cool place to leave it on. But I got two more questions. So the second last one is, what's up for you next? What are you doing? So we're filming this end of January 2020. Gonna probably publish it in early Feb. But yeah, what are your goals for 2020? Looking 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I love it. So it's funny, man, that 2019 was an interesting year for me. It was a bit of a a reset year for me on a few different levels. So, there's a few directions I was going in which I realized were probably the wrong directions. So, the worst thing in life is to climb the ladder and get to the top and realized it was placed against the wrong wall the whole time. So in a way, I kind of felt like that was a bit of me in 2019. So I've kind of taken the ladder down, I've put it up against the right wall now, and now I'm just climbing on that. So for me, that involves, what I'm doing with e-commerce, working on this business. I'm also prioritizing a lot of learning new skills this year, because there's all these things that I had wanted to learn, which I just kept putting off. And I've kind of got the luxury, I guess, of a bit more time and headspace this year. So things like I've started doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I want to learn some sort of dancing, singing, like a musical instrument, just all these random things that for me personally, I said I wanted to do, but I just never took action on. So now I'm taking action on it. And yeah, the podcast as well that I've got, James Harrisson Show, self-titled. I'm just going to keep going with that. I've been doing it for about a year now. So I've already seen like great things that have come from it, like meeting Tim, for example.
There we go.
And so I can only see that continuing, the good stuff that comes from that. So I'm just going to keep going.
Very cool. Very cool. And look, if someone's heard something on this show, wants to reach out to you, obviously the James Harrisson Show is a place to go to as well. But yeah, how do we get in touch if someone wants to reach out?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Best way is probably Instagram. So my handle's at jharris, which is JHARRISSS.
Triple S.
And that's where I'm most active. So come and connect with me there. I've also got a website, jamesharrisson.com. Harrison has 2 R's and 2 S's, just to keep people on their toes.
We had to go back and forth on the email a couple of times.
That's right. So the good news is, because it's so unusual, I got the .com. But then people often get it wrong, which is fair enough. But yeah, one of those 2 ways would be the best way to connect.
Cool. Awesome. Well, James, I've been Tim, you've been James, we've been talking, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Tim. Really appreciate you having me on the show.